What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the J Area Podcast. My name is Jose Ramos Jr. And in today's episode, I really feel like in recent weeks, I've kind of been a little bit neglectful towards All Elite Wrestling. I myself am a fan of AEW, but I don't really feel like you would tell by the judging of the content that is produced on this channel. Given that WWE has been at such a hot spot as of late, I think it's easier to really attract, wide mainstream audiences towards their product. And being that I always grew up a fan of WWE, I've been watching them since like the year 2000. So naturally, I've been trained and more inclined to follow their product. But it's always important to remember that there's always a sense of variety. There's always something else for someone else's taste. You don't necessarily have to follow the same product all the time. And being that pro wrestling is at an all-time high in the last year or so, we have other options like AEW, like TNA, like New Japan. I could keep going on and on. So in today's episode, I wanted to really hone in on what has been going on in AEW, given that this past week was Forbidden Door, a successful pay-per-view event, I might add, and being that AEW Dynamite this past week was one of the more entertaining episodes of Dynamite in quite some time. Of course, everyone is talking about MJF. And if you've watched the podcast, if you've kept up with the channel, you would know that I speak very highly of MJF. I think he's one of the best, if not the best, wrestler in AEW. I think Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland have certainly etched their name among the elite, if you will, in All Elite Wrestling. But for me, in terms of all-around character work, MJF has it all. He's good on the mic. He's good with storytelling. He's great in ring. His ability to have you cheer him or boo him is immaculate. It is second to none. So when we saw that MJF was beginning to turn babyface in the summer of last year during his program with Adam Cole, it was a different sight for a lot of people. A lot of people, myself included, were waiting for the other shoe to drop. We were waiting for the catch. And it was more of a question of not who is going to turn heel, but when is it going to happen? So when the heel turn came, and it was in the form of Adam Cole revealing himself to be that devil character that was taunting the AEW roster, it was met with mixed reviews, really, from critics, from fans. It just didn't feel right. And given that Adam Cole has been injured for like the last year, it really has slowed down the momentum of not only Adam Cole, but essentially MJF. People forget that he was the longest reigning AEW World Champion in company history. He had a successful title reign, having great matches against Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole, Samoa Joe, just to name a few. But now that he's returned, he took some time away, but since he's returned, it's really reignited that level of interest in AEW and their product. Because like I said, I feel like he really is the lightning rod within that company. All the news outlets attract to him, to what he says, to what he does. But again, still presenting himself in that babyface role. Now, whether or not you are in the company that believes that the whole heel and babyface aspects is done and gone, that still very much is a thing. And I see the way he had came back, and he was riding that line of like a tweener. He was saying and doing things that a heel would do, but yet we were cheering for him. Everyone still cheers him, saying that he is our scumbag. But that can only last for so long. MJF is a natural heel. He is at his best when he's the bad guy. Case in point, these last couple weeks. Obviously, we knew he wanted to have some kind of match with Daniel Garcia at All In. But being that he was interrupted by the international champion, Will Ospreay, that kind of rubbed him the wrong way. And that led me to believe that was going to be the story we were going to be taking to All In. Will Ospreay versus MJF. Will Ospreay right now, arguably one of the top baby faces in the company. The only other guy I can think of is maybe Swerve Strickland. And MJF really is an elite heel. So to pin these two up against each other, I think is the right move to take. Fast forward to this past week's AEW Dynamite, and again, we have the interaction between Danny Garcia and between MJF. And MJF tells him, hey, I want to be in your corner. I want to support you. And Danny Garcia, who is facing Will Ospreay in the International Championship, wants to do it the right way. He wants to be honorable. He wants to win the International Championship in an honorable fashion. But MJF consistently urging him, use the ring. Use the ring that MJF has used on so many occasions to win his matches. Already showing signs of his heel. heel tendencies, I should say. But no, Daniel Garcia, who doesn't want to do this, gives the ring back and ultimately is caught off guard by the Hidden Blade, by Will Ospreay, losing the matchup. And obviously a very emotional Daniel Garcia realizing that he's lost another opportunity at a championship. All is not lost. It's like they said on commentary, Excalibur and Tony Schiavone, he's still very young. Many opportunities to come in his direction. It's just a matter of pulling that trigger at the right time. And I love what they're doing with Garcia. We've kind of gained favor with him and beginning to establish this connection with him ever since his time with the Inner Circle. If you remember, wind the clock back when he was with the Inner Circle and Bryan Danielson was trying to lure him away because he was a pro wrestler, not a sports entertainer, but a pro wrestler. And you saw the tendencies that Daniel Garcia could be a top babyface, could be a top star. And now he's gone over with the crowd, not only with his wrestling, but with his personality, with his gimmick, with the whole dance that he does. I love seeing Daniel Garcia on TV. He's become one of my favorite acts in AEW. So to see them place this much equity, this much time in him and developing his character and developing him as a potential main event star, that really puts a smile to my face. But I tell you what, put an even bigger smile on my face is at the end of the show, you see MJF lifting up Daniel Garcia, saying, don't even worry about it. They still love you. You're still Daniel Garcia. And then ultimately he took one quick, swift kick right to the groin, going right back to that heel MJF that we always knew was still in there. I think at his best, MJF is one of those heel guys, a lifer. You shouldn't turn him. Much like The Miz, and I know some people are going to be upset with that comparison, but I look at a guy like The Miz who shouldn't be a babyface. Don't get me wrong, he can be likable at times, but he's a natural heel. Some guys just have that personality, they have that persona, they have those characteristics to where you want to boo them. You don't want to cheer these guys, you want to boo them. It's more fun to boo them. And you can tell the intensity is just brought up to an 11 when you have a guy like MJF who's able to sink his teeth into these characteristics. He's very antagonizing, he's very condescending, but more importantly, when he's aggressive, I think it's when he's at his best. You saw the bloody mess that he left Garcia and Matt Menard, by the way, who took a hell of a blade job at the end of Dynamite, to the point where it looked like you would have thought his eyes would have been taken out of the sockets and he was blind. It was a very, very interesting take to end the show, but it only proves the point that they want to elevate this MJF character even more. They want you to boo him. They don't want you to cheer him. And people obviously are still going to cheer because we have that voice. We have that opportunity to cheer and boo those who we want to cheer and boo. But you can tell they're going about this one way, and that's he is the top heel. So much so is that when he left, he was chased off by Christopher Daniels and chased off by Will Ospreay and all the members of security and the medical staff. He went through the crowd. He got into it with a fan. And I know sometimes you would think like, oh, it's a plan. It's one of those guys that they hire to interact with the wrestlers to further the storyline. No, this was deep into the crowd near the exit area where, Jon Moxley would make his entrance. And he was getting into it, yelling and screaming and nearly pushing a couple of the fans in the audience. That's the MJF we need. That's the MJF that really captured the attention of all us fans in those early years of AEW Dynamite. I think he's much more comfortable in that role of heel, and I'm interested to see where he's going to go with it. I think the obvious answer, as I mentioned in a previous episode of the podcast, I think we're going to be seeing Will Ospreay versus MJF for the International Championship at All In. I just think it makes sense. I think it's a natural progression. Initially, I did think, okay, maybe we're going to go Garcia MJF. But given the beatdown and the physicality that Daniel Garcia had taken from MJF, and they wheeled him out on a stretcher, I think it's safe to say he'll be out for a couple weeks. I don't think we're going to see him back soon. But now that Will Ospreay has interfered and interjected himself into that little battle, not even battle, more of a beatdown between MJF and Garcia, I think now he'll be fighting on his behalf. And we'll see that match at All In. I think it's going to be great. I hope they give him ample enough time to tell the story that they're going to tell. especially given that Will Ospreay has now taken himself away from Don Callis and the Don Callis family. And keep an eye on that as well, because Don Callis was suspiciously okay to letting his top guy just walk away from the family. You know, knowing Don Callis and how he is, this is the same guy that turned on Kenny Omega, right? This is the same guy who was quick to replace Kenny with Konosuke Takeshita. Look for that. I think pretty soon we'll be seeing some kind of Don Callis versus Will Ospreay storyline, and it probably will be Takeshita, who had a great ovation at Forbidden Door. But sticking with AEW Dynamite, another segment that I thought was really well done and got me invested in their story is the Britt Baker DMD and the Mercedes Mone segment. Very compelling stuff, because with Mercedes Mone, who everyone knows her to have been Sasha Banks and a member of the Four Horsewomen alongside Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, and Bayley. I think the argument can be made that Mercedes is one of the top tier wrestlers in the world, not just women, but just wrestlers in the world. Her ability to lend herself to a character, to the gimmick, and also her athletic ability inside the ring. That's second to none. But she's another one that I look at as a heel. Don't get me wrong, there are those times where she has these tendencies where you want to support her. You want to support the idea that because she grew up an Eddie Guerrero fan and she sees herself as this admirable and a fighting champion, especially because she is a little bit smaller than the other women's wrestlers, of course, in WWE. In AEW, it's a little bit more of an even playing field, but you want to cheer for that. But I think, again, she's another individual who finds comfort in getting booed. So it was interesting to see in the middle of this segment, people were cheering CEO for a while, and then halfway through, the switch had flipped, and they were chanting for her to shut the F up. And I'll tell you what, you could see in her face, she took a second and paused, and I think that's when the wheels started to turn and she realized, I got them. Because in this moment, Britt Baker can't be booed. After the promo that she had cut where she revealed that, yeah, she was gone for nearly a year due to injuries, but also due to the fact that she suffered, what they called a mini stroke, losing complete control, complete feeling over the right side of her body. And now she's back, trying to fight for the company that she basically helped launch. She was the first woman to sign with All Elite Wrestling. She was in the first women's match at All In back in 2018. In fact, I don't know if you can see it, but over my shoulder here, I have a copy of All In 2018. I thought one of the best shows that I've ever seen that was outside of the WWE and would begin the process of what All Elite Wrestling has become. You can't boo her. So in this moment, I think what they've done is found a way to elevate that TBS title in recent times. Of course, it was with Julia Hart for a while. She was a fighting champion. She was great. So was Chris Statlander. I loved what they did with Willow Nightingale because that helped elevate her into the star that she is. And by the way, she's in the finals of a second consecutive Owen Hart, tournament final. Great for Willow Nightingale. But what they're doing with this TBS title now is you have two of the top tier talent fighting for it. Britt Baker, an AEW original, Mercedes Mone, the outsider, but a multimedia star. She's been in The Mandalorian, she's been in movies, she's been in WWE, New Japan. She's currently a double champion. So the challenge has been thrown out, right? That it'll be at All In, Mone versus Baker, CEO versus DMD, and it's a toss-up. I really don't know. I don't see them having Baker lose, especially given that it's her first match back. I'm assuming, I don't know if they're going to have her have a tune-up match, beforehand. But at the same time, they've added a lot of, again, equity and significance to this Mone run. It's a toss-up. Obviously, we have to see how the story progresses, but I love the fact that Britt Baker had her time in the ring. And mid-segment, and I know I'm jumping all over the place when it comes to the whole Britt Baker and Mercedes Mone segment, but that's how much interested I am in it and how much anticipation there should be regarding this, because you're talking about two, again, like I said, top-tier talent in AEW, but Britt Baker starts up in the ring. She cuts the promo expressing her gratitude towards the fans and her hope to once again become champion. And then you see Mercedes Mone pull up, and the first people that greet her are the Young Bucks, Matthew and Nicholas Jackson. And I've seen somewhere, on Twitter that there's some rumblings of like, hey, maybe she's a part of the elite. I don't know about that. But I do like seeing, the EVPs welcoming in someone like Mercedes, because that's like their top money matchup. That's their cash cow, if you will. They look at her and they say, hey, this one's the one that's making all the money for our company. So I like when the heels kind of interact with one another and they have like-minded characteristics. I thought that was very interesting. And then on top of that, you see that they kind of cut for time and they say, okay, clear the ring. We got to have the celebration now. And in the middle of it all, you can see the stagehands start setting up the ring with the balloons, with the fixtures, and just the disrespect that they showed Britt Baker, I feel like only adds to this story between the two women. It should be a great matchup. I'm looking forward to seeing what moves forward and how they're going to make this even more heated, because after the words that were shared between Baker and Mercedes, you could take my money now. I can't wait for All In. It should be a great show. Again, emanating from Wembley Stadium. But speaking of Wembley Stadium and All In, the winners of the Owen Hart tournament finals not only get the trophy, not only get the coveted name of being an Owen Hart winner, but they get championship opportunities. And speaking of the tournament, the return of Hangman Adam Page. The much anticipated return of Adam Page, who we haven't seen since March when he suffered that loss at Revolution in the AEW World Championship matchup. Hangman Adam Page, his story I think is one of the more significant stories that AEW has ever told. Recently, I've been catching up on that initial run with AEW where he was the tag team champion with Kenny Omega, ultimately being crowned the AEW champion, which I think is one of the best stories that they have told, alongside with the CM Punk MJF feud, but I digress. Seeing him return and this aggressive side of Adam Page is a welcome sight. And I feel like this episode of the podcast, the overall theme really is returning to form. Mercedes Mone, I think, is great as a heel. It's where she seeks comfort. MJF, the top heel, maybe in wrestling, returns to form. And now Hangman Adam Page, again, locking his eyes on that world championship. And who's the world champion? Swerve Strickland, right? But the matchup against Jeff Jarrett, I almost said Jeff Hardy. But the matchup against Jeff Jarrett, I thought was really well done. And I thought the way they built up to the matchup itself was great, because you already got me invested in the fact that Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart were real life best friends. They were real life tag team partners. So you already have that level of emotional investment in this matchup. I, for one, wanted Jeff Jarrett to win the match. Obviously, I knew he wasn't going to win the tournament, but there were moments where I had myself, nearly cheering for Jeff Jarrett because of just that level of investment that they've had me, put through with this story. But then once it was revealed that he was going to be facing a wild card opponent, to which would be revealed would be Adam Page, I think we all collectively knew, okay, Jeff Jarrett's not going to end up winning. Whoever's the wild card will win. And initially, I didn't think it was going to be Adam Page, because I wasn't sure if they were going to associate him with this current iteration of the Elite. But after Hangman's win, which was a vicious win, by the way, he nails Jeff Jarrett with a Deadeye, where he could have gotten the pin 1, 2, 3, but instead he focuses on the buckshot lariat, finally hitting it, and then delivers clubby forearms to Jeff Jarrett before hitting him with another Deadeye and winning the matchup. This is an incensed Hangman Adam Page. He is consumed with the idea of winning that world title back, but I think most importantly, beating Swerve Strickland. And you saw that in the backstage segment after the match, where Nicholas and Matthew Jackson, they congratulate him. They welcome him back. Welcome back, Hangman. And they say, we scratched your back. How about you scratch our back? And Hangman Adam Page immediately turns it on and says he wants nothing to do with the Elite, that he's not a little kid anymore. He's a grown man. He doesn't need them. He doesn't want them. So this is a Hangman that's riding solo. And I love it. I love this version of Hangman Adam Page. I will say, I do kind of miss his theme song, that original theme song. But this new incarnation, whatever you want to call it, of Adam Page is a welcome sight. And he now moves on, to the semifinal, to where he has the opportunity to face, Jay White, and whoever wins that matchup will face Bryan Danielson on next week's episode of Dynamite to crown the winner of the tournament. And I don't know about you, but that matchup between him and Jay White, can't wait. Can't wait for Collision. And then on top of that, whoever wins that matchup faces Bryan Danielson. Great. It's great. I like what they're doing with AEW. And we talked about returning to form. I feel like this was the first episode of Dynamite that I was really invested in a while. Because before, in the past couple months, I watched Dynamite. I have it in the background. I'm keeping up with the stories. I'm watching my favorites. But this was the first one where it's like it didn't seem like I had to make a big effort to watch it. I wanted to see Danielson versus Pac. I wanted to see Jeff Jarrett's matchup. I wanted to see Baker and Mercedes Moné's segment. The main event between Ospreay and Garcia. This is the type of stories, the type of match quality that we should expect from AEW, especially when they're on the lead up to All In, one of their biggest shows of the year in terms of name value, but in terms of business, it is the biggest show of the year for AEW. You're going across the pond to Wembley Stadium, filling up a stadium rather, of thousands and thousands of pro wrestling fans. This is it. This is it. I don't know about you guys, but I look at the way AEW is currently structured. They have all the talent in the world. And they've said, this is where the best wrestle. But one thing I thought that they lacked was that consistent booking of storytelling. And that's not always the case. There have been really great stories being told. But I look at like Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown when the entire show is structured and formulated in a way where everything flows between one another. And it seems like a well thought out wrestling program. And I think we might have seen the proper steps that AEW needs to take. On top of that, just look, they're having talent return. Hangman Adam Page returns. Britt Baker returns. We're having these names come back. And we're adding depth to the roster. And keep in mind, we still haven't gotten like a guy like Adam Cole back. Remember? He's out too. The roster will continue to get deeper and deeper. And I feel like in time, AEW should be right back on track in terms of the level of momentum. And I just don't get the whole tribalism idea with pro wrestling fans. I love pro wrestling for pro wrestling. I'll support anyone and everyone I can. Because I feel like when there's this level of competition, healthy competition, it elevates everyone. So when some people say, we want this business to go out of business, or we want this company to do better. I just want good wrestling. I just want great product. And right now, I just can't express it enough, but we are spoiled as fans, as an audience, with the level of improvement in the storytelling, improvement in the match qualities, and just overall the presentation. So why not just enjoy it for the ride, and enjoy it for however long we have it, because this current era of pro wrestling, I hope, for one, it lasts for a long time. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward to seeing the next couple months, the next year really, of what these shows have to offer. But hey, like I said, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Let me know what you guys thought about this past week's episode of AEW Dynamite. Who do you think will win the Owen Hart tournament? And what are your thoughts on the MJF turn? Right? Go ahead and comment down below. Sound off in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep up to date with the podcast and all of the videos that I produce on this channel. Thanks again for your guys' support. Thanks again for your guys' love, and I will see you all in the next episode.